Well, Donald Trump made history Tuesday by being only the second president ever to win re-election after being turned out of office. The vote count went smoothly, and in the early hours of Wednesday morning, he declared victory.
It is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
His Democratic opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, made her concession speech that afternoon, telling supporters do not despair and urged them to keep fighting for freedom, opportunity, dignity, and fairness.
Now, I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power. A fundamental principle of American democracy is that when we lose an election, we accept the results. That principle, as much as any other, distinguishes democracy from monarchy or tyranny. And anyone who seeks the public trust must honor it.
Trump's decisive win was not forecast by many pollsters. The New York Times analysis found Trump expanded his 2020 margin in almost 2,400 counties nationwide and decreased his performance in only 240 counties. USA Today reports Harris underperformed with voters of color, especially Latino voters, but also black voters in urban centers such as Philadelphia, Detroit, and Milwaukee. 4 years ago, Biden won black voters and Latino voters by wider margins than Harris did this year. In two Florida counties with large Latino populations, Miami-Dade and Osceola, Trump won. In the last elections, those counties went Democratic. In winning Florida, Trump got more than 54% of the vote in Miami-Dade, which is majority Latino. Hillary Clinton won that county with 63% of the vote in 2016, and President Biden won it with 53% in 2020. Harris also lost ground in many college-educated suburbs, which have become Democratic strongholds in recent elections. Trump won blue-collar voters who lack college degrees 55 to 42%. That's better than 2020, when Trump won voters who lack college degrees by a narrower 50 to 48% margin over Biden. In an exit poll from Edison Research, about two-thirds of voters considered the U.S. economy in poor shape. Some 46% said their family's financial situation was worse than 4 years ago. Harris won 53% of the women's vote, while Trump won 55% of the vote by men, with Trump performing slightly better with both groups compared to 2020. Darrell, what do you think the other reasons were that Trump won this election so decisively?
Well, I think the major factor was Trump did better than almost any Republican has ever done among various demographic groups. For example, if you look at voters under the age of 30 who have traditionally supported Democrats in the past, half of them voted for Harris this time around, but 4 years ago, 60% of them voted for Biden. If you look at black voters, 80% of them voted for Harris, but 4 years ago, 90% of them voted for Biden. If you look at Latino voters, half of them voted for Harris, but 4 years ago, 60% of them voted for Biden. So he made large headways in these traditional Democratic groups. She really didn't make any substantial headways in other groups that had traditionally voted Republican. So that's certainly one of the factors. The other side of the coin is Harris. Harris had her own difficulties and problems. Not all of them her fault, you might say. Certainly the fact that she got a very late start in the campaign didn't give her much time to identify herself. That in itself was a major problem for her, not being able to identify herself. She kept talking about we're going to have a new generation of Democratic leadership, a new generation of leadership, period. And yet when asked the question, how would you differ from Biden? What would you do differently? She said, I can't think of a thing. So how do you have a new generation if you can't distinguish yourself or separate yourself from the other side? But the big issue, I think, was the economy. And it seems very strange because if you look at it, economists will tell you the economy of the United States has been quite good. We've got a low employment rate. Yes, we had a high inflation rate at the beginning of the Biden administration, but the inflation rate has come down substantially. And Biden perhaps should get credit for that, but he certainly didn't. But there's no doubt that was a major factor. And if you just look at a couple of the key states this time, well, let's look at the United States. 4 years ago, 50% of the country economically was in a poor or bad situation economically. This year, it was 68%. In Georgia, it went from 47% 4 years ago saying the economy was bad to 73%. And you go down all of those competitive states, everyone thought the economy was bad when in fact it was quite good. And so you get the difference between perception and reality. Yeah. People perceive the economy to be bad.
Well, Dan, would you agree? And do you think that the Democrats did not do a good job arguing their case about the economy?
I think Kamala Harris ran a great campaign. And she did articulate economic issues about making housing more affordable, helping small businesses get started, which would have benefited all these demographic groups. You know, Daryl knows this from his years as a political scientist. There's that old saying that the citizenry gets the government it deserves. And what we learned here, I think, is that character no longer matters. We just elected a guy who's been convicted on 34 counts, who surrounds himself with racists, and the Madison Square Garden rally was sort of a microcosm of his campaign. And that there was a great story in the New York Times, Peter Baker noted in 2020, George W. Bush referred to Clinton and Gore as bozos. And there was this great hue and cry. Why, this is not presidential. You know, this is a violation of the traditional rhetoric we expect from. I mean, at that rally, they were calling Hillary Clinton a son of a bitch. They were calling her a whore and her advisors pimps. Character no longer matters.
Yeah. Carmen, I want you to respond to that, but also want to ask you, what should be the number one item on incoming President Donald Trump's agenda? What would you like, or what do you think the voters would like to see him do first in his first weeks in office?
Well, I think definitely the economy was the big deciding factor. So I think most Americans would like to see, one, us become energy independent again. I think as we start producing our own oil again, we bring gas prices down, that's going to bring down the price of goods, because people can say the economy's better right now or inflation or whatever, but people still aren't feeling it in their pocketbooks. We go to the grocery store, groceries are still very expensive, your utility bills. So all of the things that rely on us being energy independent that can help that trickle down effect to grocery stores, groceries, farming, everything, once energy is cheaper, then the price of goods will start coming back down.
That's what you'd like him to do, but what about his other promises that he's going to deport millions of undocumented immigrants, he's going to put higher tariffs on imported goods, he's going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, he wants to free some January 6th rioters. What about those promises he made?
I think that those are things he should definitely get to. I think that those are things the majority of his supporters would like to see him do. But I think, one, when you fix the economy, that helps every American, whether you're a Democrat, non-party affiliated Republican. We need to get to a place where every American feels the benefits of the policies that he's going to put in place. Those other things, maybe a little more side things. I think the border needs to be fixed. As far as deportation, I do think that people that are here illegally need to go back to their country. They need to come in the correct way. And I have neighbors that are Hispanic. They came in, they became legal citizens, and even they are worried about the border and people coming in illegally because they don't know. They're just as concerned as the rest of us. We don't know who these people are that are coming into our country right now in mass numbers.
Alex, when you hear drill, incoming President Trump said, "Drill, baby, drill," and he wants more drilling. What does that mean to you?
Well, we are energy independent already. We are actually an exporter of natural gas, and so to me, it's not an energy independent issue. It does go back to the economy. When you have young people like my own children who are in their early 30s who are struggling to figure out how to buy a house, it's no joke that young people voted for Trump, and it's all about change.
Why didn't young people hear that message from Kamala Harris when she said she was going to give them assistance to buy a first house?
Daniel is exactly right. She had policies out there, but I think the mindset is that, just like how did Trump get unelected the last time? It's because people weren't feeling good about the state of the country, and they switched over to Biden. So there was no way for Biden to overcome this perception and also the reality in terms of the pocketbooks of young people, middle-aged people, that they are not as well off financially. I don't disagree with the fact that they're not as well off financially, although the economy, the stats, the unemployment rate, the wage increases are all booming. She just could not overcome that.
And if you think, if these people who voted for Trump think the economy is bad, wait till Trump takes over the economy. If he imposes these 200% tariffs and engages in these tariff wars with our allies around the world and with China and others, it's gonna blow. You talk about inflation. The prices will go up. It'll be and if he does things like he wants to eliminate the tax on Social Security. I get Social Security. It would be nice not to have to pay taxes on it. It would be catastrophic.
Because the future of Social Security would then be shortened.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say the Democrats are not going to do themselves any favor if their simple explanation for what happened is the electorate was stupid and they elected Trump as president. That's going to be a losing strategy for the Democrats. They've got to figure out what's wrong with us, not what's wrong with the Republicans. The majority of Americans voted for Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump was the first Republican in over 2 decades to get a majority of the majority of the presidential vote. That's a big plus. He was also the first Floridian ever to be elected president. So there's a lot of firsts for Trump. For whatever reason, they voted for him. But Democrats have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, what did we do wrong? How do we have to restructure the party? Every party goes through this soul searching when they lose, and the Democrats lost substantially when they had what they thought was a very strong candidate who was both a woman and a black, and they expected to turn out the women's vote, and the majority of the electorate is black. It's about 52% black.
Well, as a Democrat on this panel, I will say that we're not making any excuses. And I agree that we need to go back and say, what's wrong with our message?
Okay.
But back to a point that Daniel made, and I have to bring this up. If you ask me what Donald Trump should do on day one, he should figure out a way to assure women that he is not going to denigrate us and call us names like trash and the C word, and the language that came out of the mouths of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance about women was so abhorrent.
Okay, but
he needs to bring the country back together.
Can we
as
have the
opposed
same
to
promise from
divide.
Democrats that they'll stop calling all Republicans deplorables and garbage and misogynist and racist? And we have been dealing with these name-calling things for almost 8 years now, where we have been called everything in the book, racist, every ism, every ist, everything.
When you
so
have language that is racist, we need to call it out.
But you guys are doing the same thing to us. So the rhetoric on both sides needs to stop. Name calling needs to stop.
I would agree with that.
And we need to come back to common sense policy, learn to work together, and stop the name calling and learn to forge a way forward.